All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Scott Kinney. I'm very happy and feel privileged to be hosting this session this afternoon. And whether you came here because you have a deep abiding interest in this very interesting topic or you needed a quiet place of repose, you are welcome, regardless of your intent. And we hope for the next 40 minutes or so to have an engaging discussion about the topic of employers and their role as educators in a post-college or maybe post-high school kind of environment. And so it's an interesting topic, one that I think has been a source of conflict almost between employers and universities for at least 50 years. And you probably saw the survey, it's a few years back now, but first Inside Higher Ed polled university chancellors about what kind of a job they're doing preparing their graduates for the workforce, and 92% said they were doing an outstanding job, and then they asked the exact same question of employers, and 11% said they were doing an outstanding job. So there's always been a gulf of what is the role of our higher education system in preparing its graduates for the workforce versus what employers actually expect. Let me briefly introduce our panel here, and then we'll get right into it. You can certainly read a lot about each of them, and they all have fascinating backgrounds, but I'll just give a really quick intro. Starting right next to me here, this is Jill Buban. Jill runs the EdAssist solutions business for Bright Horizons, where they offer a pretty diverse array of workforce solutions, workforce education, student loan support, but also she's been in the higher ed world as well, working at a number of universities, including on the faculty at BC. So I think has a great understanding of both sides of that. Next to her, moving down, we have Sophie Ruddock, the VP and General Manager at Multiverse, a UK-based business that is offering alternatives to not just traditional university-based education and training, but also corporate training through professional apprenticeships. And she's based in New York, and they're planning a launch in the US as well. Next to her, we have Nicole Lembo, the Manager of Talent Management and Academic Programs at JetBlue, working in an industry that has been hard hit as any over the last 18 months and thinking about what that might mean for developing your leaders of the future. And then down at the end, David Blake. David has been coming to these ASU+GSV Summits as long as I have, maybe 1 year longer, and was the founder of Degreed, one of the founders of Degreed, but has recently founded a couple of new interesting businesses, BookClub, and particularly relevant for today's discussion, LearnIn, which is very much addressing how to help upskill and reskill people through employers, but tackling the obstacles to that, which can include how to pay for that, how much time it takes, what the career mobility would look like. So it's a very interesting enterprise that David is.
You memorized that exactly as I gave it to you. So I told him $50 if he could get the pitch in before the 5-minute mark.
I actually came up with that all on my own just by distilling what I read.
Yeah.
So maybe like a lot of you, I've been paying a lot of attention to DE&I kinds of topics over the last couple of years than probably the first 35 years of my career. And around inclusion and engagement, I've been learning some tips and tactics, so I'll use one of them right now. And I would like to ask everybody, including our panelists, to rate with your hands, with both hands, from 0, 5, 7, 10, how strongly you would agree with this statement. I'll give you a 3, 2, 1, and you can put your hands up and leave them up for a second so we can look around and see where people are in this topic. So how strongly, 0, 10, do you agree with this statement that in 10 years, so in 2031, the U.S. 4-year college degree will still be a required credential for most companies, most employers, when they're recruiting knowledge workers? I'll exclude coders from that because that ship has already sailed. But for everything else, all other professional workers, 10 years from now, will the college degree still be as powerful and influential in how employers assess talent and what they require? Okay, put your hands up in 3, 2, 1. We're all over the place, which I think is great that we've got a lot of different points of view on this. I think it's a hard one to predict. It's been predicted. The demise of the college degree has been predicted for a very long time. David tried to kill it, couldn't, but he's trying again. And so we'll kind of start with that. My first question, and I think I'll start here with Nicole, as you know, our only employer in the room. Well, that's not quite right, but you know what I mean. Representing a large employer.
We're with
so, do you believe that employers are taking their role as educators? They've always had a role. It goes way back in training and upskilling, but are they thinking about that role differently? Are they taking it more seriously than before? And if they are, what are they starting to do that's different?
I would say yes in my limited experience. Also, just let me say, thank you for being nice to me. This is my first panel at ASU+GSV. These guys are like extremely experienced. So thank you in advance for your patience. I think absolutely it's being taken more seriously. There are so many companies now that even are just open to hearing about how they can offer some type of educational benefit, whether it be an upskilling, certification, a degree type situation, hint, hint, or a more traditional college degree pathway. I think maybe 10 years ago, really the only option was tuition reimbursement. And the creativity that has come through from different disruptors in the education industry and from educational institutions every so often becoming more progressive themselves. I know we work with some extremely progressive institutions that, 15, 20 years ago, never had a shot, right, at partnering with an institution or an employer or anything like that. So I think the creativity has expanded significantly. I think the way we do things at JetBlue is very different than they do it at Disney and Walmart, right? And very different than maybe how Jill does it through EdAssist. So I think there's so many more options now, and you can really, each employer can take their budget and say, what can we do with this that isn't just that 5250 tuition reimbursement that tends to have very little meaning for anybody who's not already enrolled. So I just think the sheer number of options out there has completely changed the landscape. So thankfully, yes, they're taking it more seriously.
Do you think, so even though tuition reimbursement isn't necessarily strategic, it's not targeted, it's expensive, they spend a lot of money on it. Do you think that as these alternatives get better, will that go away, or will that always be there as a benefit?
That's a great question. I think there are plenty of companies who just want to check the box. And if that line item in their P&L is working for them, then fine, don't fix it if it isn't broken. But I think what will help some of these companies win the war for talent right now, not on, sorry. We're not trying to hurt anyone. But I think like the labor market right now is so insanely strong. The competition for talent is more fierce than it was pre-COVID. And you have to have something different to offer. And so I think as tuition reimbursement goes, it's never going to be a bad thing to throw a little bit of money at education. It's not evil. But I think as you look at the value proposition of your next company, that's when it becomes like, okay, well, you can give me $52.50 a year, but over here at Walmart, they're going to pay for my entire college, right? So I think it will be there until it no longer serves its purpose in the value proposition for talent.
David, Sophie, Jill, your clients are companies like JetBlue. Are you seeing them think differently about how they do the things that we were just hearing about over at JetBlue?
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting situation over at Bright Horizons. We actually serve hundreds of employers and hundreds of thousands of learners through EdAssist, but we also after being in this industry for just over 10 years, we have created our own program. So it's an absolutely no-cost program for our early childhood educators. We have over 1,000 in that program. So I'm really proud to be up here and say we're like walking the walk. So it's not only talking the talk and being that intermediary between the companies and the universities or skills-based programs, David, not just universities. So that's kind of unique about us, and to be able to track that data and really be able to talk to our employer partners about the program that we've created and have those conversations about that. So I had to get that in too, Scott.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
keep going. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're definitely, and I'll just say I'm in the job 40 days as well. So it's been a great 40 days. But prior to that, as Scott mentioned, a lot of experience in adult learning and workforce ed. And I think in adult learning, we've been watching these kind of stackable credentials and different types of skills become more and more evident. But they've been there for a decade. But now I think that recognition is there by both the employer and the employee that there are different pathways, not only to be upskilling by the employee's choice, where that's likely the beginning of the 5250, right? Mm-hmm. The employee wants to go back to school, it's only a degree. And now we're seeing that the employer also wants to attract, retain talent, and that could be done through skills-based learning or a degree, all of these different types of pathways. So I definitely think there's more attention on that by the employer, and looking for more assistance in how they create these programs and these different pathways that work for both their employees and their company.
Mm-hmm. Sophie, Multiverse offers an alternative that is much less common, at least in the US, around apprenticeships. What has been the reception to that as a different way of accessing talent and actually nurturing it?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about employers as educators, the way that we've started to talk about it is with the lens that it's, we're doing this for the individual. Of course, we're all employees. We all want our company to care about us. But actually, employers as educators for me is also because the current college system is not delivering on skills as well as knowledge. And therefore, employers are needing to step up to the mantle because actually they need data skills, they need digital marketing skills, they need software engineering skills, and that is not coming out of a four-year college. And so we've seen this huge shift. And so when we're talking to employers, and as a business, we're working with employers from the Fortune 500, but also small and medium-sized businesses, tech scale-ups, so a whole different suite of businesses. But every single executive that I talk to is grappling with two challenges: digital transformation and the trillions of dollars that is spent on technologies, and actually the skills gap that's left as a result, because we've got all these new technologies and we don't know how to interact with it. And then on the other side, they're struggling with diversity and building a diverse workforce. And so continually sort of going back to the idea that we need to sort of find and source our talent from a four-year college, and that sort of age-old wisdom. When you asked that question at the beginning, I stood here with my arms crossed, because actually, if we don't end up in a place in 10 years' time where actually we have dramatically shifted away from using college as a proxy for intelligence and talent, I think we as a society have failed. We failed individuals, we failed those from all walks of life, and we failed to acknowledge that talent is evenly distributed and opportunity isn't. So the reception to apprenticeships has been really positive. Now, when I go in and I start talking about apprenticeships, I get some glazed eyes. I go, oh yeah, I've heard of this, it's in construction, or oh yeah, we have an internship program. Is that the same? Now, when I start talking about how a program like a professional apprenticeship can partner with a business to solve big challenges around transformation skills and diversity, and apprenticeships are a way that deliver value for the individual from a retention point of view, progression, skills, pay rise, promotion, 92% of our apprentices stay long term, and solve those big transformation challenges, then companies start listening, and that's when the conversation starts to get interesting. Yeah.
I saw that over half of your I don't know if you call them students or learners, or but over half of them are people of color. They come from minority populations. And is that intentional? Has it just worked out that way? And how does that feed into your proposition to employers?
So we are very intentional about ensuring that our opportunities reach everyone. And so we are incredibly focused on ensuring we've got partnerships with community colleges, community groups, nonprofits, schools, that we've got a big social media presence. And so if people are sort of looking, how do I find a job without a college degree? They're seeing us on TikTok. And as a result, it means that we do have a very diverse candidate pool. And we're reaching those from the most sort of economically under-resourced communities. And that's incredibly intentional because we're looking to sort of prove the value proposition that we all know that actually talent really is everywhere. And so it's been incredibly exciting to see sort of that sort of diversity and breadth of experience from the top of our candidate funnel all the way through to those who get placed, all the way through to those who then complete their 12 to 18-month full-time apprenticeship at these businesses. But equally encouraging is when we start to see people from more privileged backgrounds also starting to get excited about apprenticeships. We call this, I hope this translates to American, but sort of middle-class dinner party test, which is where we get to a point in sort of 10 years' time where college is not the answer, and where sort of businesses and executives are hiring those from all walks of life, is when you're at a dinner party and you start showing off about your kids and someone's going, well, my kid's going to Harvard, and someone else goes, and my kid's going and doing a Multiverse apprenticeship. And that's really where apprenticeships win, and they become for everyone, and it's what I'm very excited about as we're starting to see that change.
David, what do you think about when you, and it can be learn-in related or not, but as you think about employers, they are so stuck on old ways of doing things when it comes to recruitment and even promotion and internal mobility. Are you seeing that start to change? Do you think what will it take to get that to change? And you've been at this for 10 years now, so what do you think?
I love that I was introduced as the person who has failed to kill the college degree. And
well, you built a successful company instead.
I will put that on my tombstone. The guy who tried to kill the college degree failed but died trying. I think the conversation, it's an interesting litmus test that you just kind of gave us. Like, when someone says, I got into Harvard, you say, congratulations. When someone says, I just enrolled myself in a data science course, people don't really say, like, congratulations. They say, like, interesting. Like, we're kind of like, and 10 years ago, they would have said, like, what is that and why do you bother? So, like, we're kind of making progress. We took our kids out of school to build an apprenticeship-based program. So that is, I'm very proud of it. So it's an interesting litmus test. I think, also just a proud moment as an American when you said, I hope this translates. You didn't say American English. You said American, which I think is the founding fathers would be proud of this moment we're all sharing right here.
I am actually half American despite the accent.
Yeah. But, it speaks of cultural tides. And I do think, like I'm actually really worried at the moment. I think the most dangerous thing that can happen right now is that we've got this system where the rate of tuition is outpaced everything except for the rate of healthcare. When I started degreed, the average student loan debt was like $24,000. Last I checked, it's now like $38,000. The ROI, so PayScale does an interesting report, which is the ROI of universities and degrees, and the number of colleges that now have a negative ROI is going up. and the number of majors and programs that have a negative ROI is going up. And it's not because the value of a degree is becoming less valuable, it's because, for the most part, the costs continue to rise.
Well, and you probably saw it's disproportionate as well, where students of color have much more debt, which over the last, what was it, 10 years, there was that article in the Wall Street Journal a couple days ago, it's widened the income gap, the achievement gap. It's not solving it.
So I think there's the danger at the moment. It's on a couple of fronts, but that is we've exhausted the ROI of a college degree, not because they aren't valuable, but because the cost is just eating through it. And that instead of fixing the problem, we find ever yet more interesting or clever ways of subsidizing it. And we're seeing that with student loan forgiveness, perhaps an unpopular opinion, but I believe that what that does is it just props it all up for a moment longer. And perhaps an unpopular opinion, but I don't actually think it's advantageous or healthy long-term to see these employers stepping in to start to subsidize the cost. So we as consumers are starting to determine that the ROI isn't worth it if we're paying out of our pocket, or if we have to spend mom and dad's money to do it. You know, and Uncle Sam's been paying for it for a while, and it's eaten through that equation. And so now what we're seeing is employers are kind of like the last subsidizer of it. And I think what it does is it keeps us in this moment it props it all up for a moment longer, and, you know, to the benefit of some, but ultimately to the detriment of all. And we've got to get to the place where we are getting smarter and more efficient and more focused. I love the call out of stackable credentials, but skill-based. At the moment, I truly believe the absolute worst thing you can spend your tuition assistance on is tuition. It's the absolute lowest pound for pound. It is the absolute worst choice you can make in your education or upskilling. Looks like you might have a little something.
Let's hear it, Jill.
This is how I get invited back every year. Is there like, you know?
We put the pot stirrer on.
Well,
the
I think we're used so much to hearing about the employer paying for the benefit that we're not looking at those programs in which the employer's contributing, but the university is also contributing a discount as well on the tuition. And I think that, you know, we're definitely driving that at EdAssist and passing the savings on to the student while not fixing the entire tuition problem. I think looking for innovative ways to get employers, learners, and institutions to be working together, or, you know, credentialing company, whatever it is, but driving that cost down in partnership with the university or the credential provider shines a light on the need for the university to be not just a provider, but a partner.
Sure, but 10% off a price that keeps on going up year over year is ultimately a Band-Aid.
How about 25?
That's what I was going to say.
Where do you want to go, David?
I'm sorry, go ahead. You were ready to rock and roll. Sorry to steal your thunder. Hopefully I won't. I think for us as, you know, the evil employer, it is like we need a substitute. Like, give us something else. Degreed, let us know how it works. I think this is such a huge part of the conversation, right? There's so many alternative ways to get the learning, and it is college level. And in some cases, it's above college level. Like, there are airplane mechanics at JetBlue who can do things that I truly cannot imagine, right? Like, that is an incredible depth of knowledge. So I think there's widespread agreement that classroom learning is not the only learning and is oftentimes not the best learning, but there's no widely accepted alternative. Like, apprenticeships sound great, upskilling sounds great, but if we do it at JetBlue in one way and then an employee of ours quits and goes over to Bright Horizons, does it mean the same thing over there? So until there's like a universal, or at least national, somewhat national understanding of what some of these credentials and these certifications mean, we have to all speak the same language before they're going to hold the same meaning as a college degree. That's why the college degree has persisted despite David's best efforts.
Well, and I also think, like, if we split apart, I don't want to talk too much about the tuition, but if we're looking at an adult serving institution, a WGU, an Empire State College, a UMGC, what I'm hearing from you is the prior learning assessment. So they're working these programs which drive down costs, and they're assessing this employee's learning and providing credit for that. It's not like well known. Of course, the light's on adult learners now, but it's been happening for 50 years. But it's thinking of those ways and then having that be portable if they are to go from JetBlue to Bright Horizons.
Absolutely.
So I think calling it a benefit is entirely the wrong thing, because a benefit to who? Right? Like, we go back to that earlier point, this benefit, a college degree is a benefit. You should never say on a panel that you agree with someone, but I completely agree with what David said there, because actually this idea that, you give someone access to some online learning, you can be tax deductible, but actually what is it driving? Is it driving someone's progression? Is it driving someone's productivity? Is it driving someone's ability to go for that next promotion? Or actually, are you asking someone to learn how to ride a bike by reading the manual? And when we think about that portability, actually, it starts to sing for itself if you're talking about skills. And that's where I stay quite far away usually from these sort of tuition reimbursement conversations in the typical sense, partly because actually I think skills-based development training, when it's drawing on the right pedagogy, when you're using market-led curriculum, when it's done in partnership with the business, actually that's where you get the benefit, right? You get the benefit from improved productivity, increased retention, diversity-powered performance. You start to see people with no data analytics skills becoming billable from their leading consultants within 3 months. And all of that for me is where actually I think sometimes we as an industry start talking about the wrong things and forgetting about what that outcome that we're actually setting out to achieve is. You can ask most people why they go to college, and the number one reason they'll say is to get a job. And actually that conventional wisdom is no longer standing. And so I think we need to change the questions that we're asking about sort of what is the point. Of course, a benefit is a benefit, and it's great, and you feel valued and you feel happy and cared for. But actually, the reason why I have health insurance is also so that when I get sick, I can be taken care of. And the reason why I would enroll, or I would want members of my team, or why I partner with Salesforce to develop training is so that they're actually able to get the benefit, so that when the systems break, or when you make a big acquisition, or you're thriving in this ever-changing world, you've got the team equipped to actually make those changes.
Nicole, I'd like to follow up on something you said, where it would be helpful to you if there were a set of national standards in all these different disciplines that were meaningful and widely accepted. We have been waiting for 20, 30, 40 years for something like that to emerge. Could be a long wait.
Yes.
What else would provide a similar kind of signaling mechanism? Because I think the college degree signals something very different from skills, and there'll still be demand there as a coming-of-age experience, or how to project status and find the person you're going to marry, and all these things that have nothing to do with your skills. So let's say that we never get that comprehensive set of widely accepted, robust national standards. How else could you achieve what you're looking to do?
That's a great question. I'll be interested to hear Jill's thoughts on this as well, and everyone's. But I think colleges have an opportunity, and so do large companies. They do have an opportunity to kind of leverage their brand. Like, I think of Google's IT for Everyone certification that's offered through Coursera. Like, that is something that may not have any type of like national stamp of approval from the Department of Education or anything. Who cares, right? But I think what's interesting about that is we hear Google and it's in tech, and we're like, that makes sense. That holds meaning to us because of the branding.
Because the brand means something.
The brand means something. So I think that that could potentially be one pathway to that. And I think if we find, there are so many alternatives out there that do provide the skills, and I think the assessments could be part of translating that to an employer. Because for the employer, and Jill and I have talked about this, it's like, yes, all of this is true, right? Like we need all these alternative pathways, and there are so many different ways to do it, but also when push comes to shove, there's liability in hiring, and we have a board to answer to, right? So if we aren't doing things in a way that we can back up and is, evidence-based, then what are we doing? Like this, JetBlue's a pretty modern company, but our board is pretty dang traditional, right? If we were like, we're gonna do all these amazing apprenticeships and here's what they're gonna do, they're gonna be like, wait, right? And maybe 5 years from now, we get approval to do something like that. So there's always gonna be companies out there that are the early adopters, and I think that can be really helpful in terms of what might work as a substitute. Something that's like endorsed, like maybe a hospitality degree that's been co-designed by Disney, right? Like, because that says something. So that's, I think from an employer perspective, again, evil employer, there's a lot to balance. And so that's where things end up being like, okay, we make progress rather than perfection sometimes. And I think there are certainly benefits to all types of learning, whether it's in a classroom or online or in an apprenticeship or socially through your colleagues. There are different types of benefits to all of those things. And I think if we can put a little bit of language to it, like this apprenticeship in data science not only teaches them R and SQL and the like, right? But also the critical thinking now has gone from 0 to 10. Right? Like, so the quote unquote soft skills that are actually completely critical, like our biggest fear is hiring somebody that we then can't get rid of for 2 years if they suck. So like the skills thing is very real. Like we want that, but I think it has to be something that a giant team of recruiters can all be on the same page about. And, something like we were just able to get in our entry-level IT, instead of 1 year experience, we have successful completion of Google's IT for Everyone certification, right? And so like that's opening it up, and it's not perfect, but it is progress. Right,
Jill, do you have a take on that as well?
Again, I'm agreeing. I 100% agree because you have degreed on my mind now. Because you are answering to a lot of people as an employer, and I think there are innovative solutions. I'll tell this through the lens of the learner quickly because I see us ticking down. But there's employer needs, and when those employers have benefit, desire, whatever word we want to put in there to extend their education through whichever pathway they choose, they're choosing that. Are they upskilling? Do they want to get a college degree? I don't think many are going to get a full bachelor's degree when they're caring for their children, working full time, doing 6 other things, unless they have some innate personal desire. It's not just about the position that they're in, because there's a lot of people that don't want a degree. And I think there are some technologies, there are some companies that are trying to support that and reduce the cost. I'm thinking of Straighterline, where you can take your gen eds, it's self-directed, self-paced, get through at a much, much reduced cost, and then continue it on and specify in your marketing major or whichever your specialization is in your degree. So, I think while we can't solve the world's problems and spin on a dime to a completely different system, I think helping employers find the right paths for those learners and find what works for their industry while driving costs down is really where we are right now.
Yeah. Sophie, Nicole said it. You're not going to be successful pitching apprenticeships to JetBlue.
I would never
because
say
of
that.
their overly conservative board.
She did say that, though.
She did say something like that.
Every
What could you do differently to to convince large employers like JetBlue who are balancing all sorts of risks and they've got complex businesses to run. What can you do to make the case that adopting this is going to be the right solution for them?
Good challenge. So there are two reasons why I think we would be able to change your board's mind.
She's going to pitch me now.
No, I'm not going to pitch you because we've got 5 minutes and I don't want to monopolize. But I think there will be sort of two reasons. And the first is hearts and minds, and you don't want to be not everyone wants to be the Google and be the early adopter. And so by actually being able to point to 300 odd enterprise clients ranging from very serious investment banks like Morgan Stanley and Citibank, through to sort of fintech companies like Visa and MasterCard, through to consultancies, through to big tech, through to smaller companies. You've got then those proof points, and would make sure we've got that.
Which de-risks it.
Which de-risks it. You're not alone. And then secondly, and more importantly for sort of an executive with P&L responsibility, is the business case. And we're not saying do apprenticeships and feel good about yourself. We're saying do apprenticeships because it's the right thing for your business. And we have sort of our own business case for apprenticeships more generally, really driving a huge return on investment of up to about $8 for every $1 spent over 3 years. But then we would build that specifically for every company we work with as well, so that actually in a year, in 6 months, in 2 years, in 5 years, you're looking at the impact of a program. You're tracking that related to what's important to you, your board priorities, and your strategy. So we're not saying take a chance. We're saying we will hold ourselves to the same metrics that you as a board hold your executive team to, and everything else.
But it's the right choice for the employer, but is that portable if the employee chooses to leave?
I mean, I'd be really interested in everyone else's view. I would argue yes. It's the same sort of bike riding example, right? Yes, there's no sort of official certificate that shows that you know how to ride a bike, but you just give someone a bike and they're able to ride down the road and do their wheelies and everything else. And actually, when you're talking about skills and development, actually, if someone knows Python is the same language whether you're at Google or Facebook or JetBlue, and the value that someone can add by having those skills, I would argue, is a lot more than what you get from a history degree.
I have a history degree.
So do I.
David, you're offering a yet better mousetrap, again, to employers around skill development. Is that what is going to get them to change their behavior, or do you have to address other objections and challenges and things that stand in the way?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to bring it back full circle, I mean, I think this is entitled The Fourth School System, and I love that we're having this conversation, but if you just step back and say, where is this conversation at? We've mostly been talking about still how employers interface with the university system and et al. Others behind it. I think the future, the truth is that employers must be the fourth education system. Like right now, the conversation is still about how employers outsource skilling, how employers outsource learning, how they outsource development. And that isn't going to suffice. Like we're like right now, it's 2, 4, 6, 9 years. That's how long any one of us have ever spent at a university, but we spend 30, 40, 50 years with our employer. And in a world in which technology is advancing faster than humanity can learn, the only hope we have is if employers become good educators and managers become good teachers. Like that's the only hope we've got. That's it. And so, thank you. So, but it's a hard job and it's harder. I mean, just as the market, what we've seen here, all of us, ASU, GSV, the last 5, 7 years, we are solving the problems in order of difficulty. And like we've solved problems, they were important problems, but it's now kind of exposed a harder yet problem, which is knowledge and learning is easier than upskilling. Like I love the bike riding example, but I mean, you can watch a CrossFit video in 17 minutes on YouTube, but it doesn't turn you into a CrossFit athlete. Like, and that's the difference between knowledge and learning and skilling.
Just destroyed my entire fitness plan.
So we've spent, collectively, all of us, we've spent the last 5-7 years developing more content, more CrossFit videos to put on YouTube. And it has now come to all of us, now is the moment in time that we've got to get good at turning people into athletes. And that's where we're at, and it's a harder challenge, and that's what we've dedicated ourselves to, is not us doing it, and not even facilitating your outsourcing of it, but ultimately the goal is you as the employer have to get good at it, and we're here to be your partner in helping you figure it out.
It's a great thing for us to be focused on for the next 10 years. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.